BBOR, Black Box, online radio, coming to you from West Virginia. So, what can we say? The name Greta Thunberg has been mentioned in the news a lot recently. She was listed as the Time Person of the Year for 2019, and a lot of people have had, well, I guess you would say mixed feelings about this. You have people who are more on the political left absolutely enthusiastic about this because they think that now climate change is one of their major issues, and what the people on the right are just very much to the contrary. So, what really is going on with Greta Thunberg becoming the Person of the Year for Time in 2019? And this is totally going to be our mini upload for the day. We just have a very small thing to say about this one. First and foremost, I think there is something rather disappointing about how the concept of climate change has become so politicized that it's now a left versus right issue. I mean, how on earth can something like climate change be left versus right? This is something that is very clearly that is going to affect us all, and it's just a matter of interpreting the scientific data. One of the things, though, I have to say is I was actually rather disappointed with Time for choosing Greta Thunberg as the Person of the Year for 2019. And by the way, I've also noticed that many of the commentators are now pronouncing her name differently. Like, I noticed when Greta talks, she pronounces her last name Thunberg, and my West Virginian pronunciation is still carrying onward. Greta Thunberg is somebody whom I thought they should not have chosen for the Time Person of the Year in 2019. Very simply because I find that the conversation in the interviews really does not happen so much with climate change. It's always focusing on her, and that is no fault of Greta's. I don't even dislike her. As a public personality, I don't even think that she is a bad public personality. It's just whenever they're having these types of interviews and they're trying to discuss about what her message is, 75% or 85% of the time, she's just telling her life story. They're just asking, what is it like growing up with Asperger's? What are the challenges that you're facing? What are your parents like? They're just talking about her. And I don't think that that is absolutely an accident. In all seriousness, I believe there is probably something that has been somewhat deliberately calculated behind Greta Thunberg. I wouldn't say anything like George Soros, absolutely not. That's probably just a wacky conspiracy theory that's not true. But you can see why people find somebody like Greta Thunberg very useful. She is someone who is very young. She's only 16. She has Asperger's. She's female. She is someone who is from a different country, speaks a different first language. If anybody criticizes her in any way, immediately they are viewed as a bully, and people have been fired even from, was that one guy fired from Fox News or something for saying that she's mentally ill? They're like, oh, you can't say that about a teenage girl with Asperger's syndrome. And in all seriousness, he should not have said that. That's a rude and insensitive thing to do. But that's what I mean when I say that there feels like there's just this sense of calculation that is involved with having Greta Thunberg as the Person of the Year for 2019. It really feels like a lot of people are supporting her because she is someone that people cannot criticize. But that's not even the biggest reason why I said I don't think she should have been Person of the Year. It was more about how they were saying that the conversation just shifts to her. People start wanting to hear her life story as opposed to talking about climate change. And I do have to insist that maybe 15 to 20% of the time, she's actually talking about climate change and reducing the Earth's temperature, and she's talked about the carbon budget and the gigatons of carbon that we can admit the carbon budget, right? Okay, she talks about that a little bit, and then the rest of it is just, this is all wrong, I shouldn't be here. And in one of the interviews, she said that she has a team of advisors that are helping her out. She talks to scientists to make sure that the data that she's putting out is correct. But some of the things that they advised her to do were to say things like, how dare you, or our house is on fire. But then she's like, she regretted it because that's all that people remembered. And I'm really glad that somebody like Greta Thunberg just stood up and said, yes, yes. That is all people are talking about. When I listen to the attacks on Greta Thunberg, first and foremost, they say things like she shouldn't have said, how dare you, and like this is all wrong, I shouldn't be here. People are just like latching on to those words. Those are just the connecting words. They don't even have anything to do with the science. And this is one of the things that we're dealing with, though, when you have a public personality like Greta Thunberg making these types of public appearances, because then people want to go after her. And the climate change discussion is now, do you like Greta or do you not like Greta? What did Greta say and do you agree with it or not? And in reality, this is not about any public personality. But some of the other people that were nominated for the Time Person of the Year included, of course, Donald Trump. The president is almost always on the list, but the Hong Kong protesters were the ones that I thought were actually going to win, not because I wanted them to win. It was just that you could vote for these things online, and like, Time sends something to your email account, right? And 92% or something of the people responded saying they wanted the Hong Kong protesters to challenge the Chinese government and all that. They should have been the ones who should have been the person of the year. This sounds kind of silly, but I've never liked it in the past when Time gives their person of the year to a group. And like, in one time they gave it to the Me Too movement. How could they not, right? But it's like, I really wish they would actually make it person of the year as opposed to groups. And one of the things we've talked about a lot in the past is the Whistleblowers edition, which featured some things even tied to 9/11 truth. We've mentioned that a little bit on this channel. So like, they just gave the person of the year to whistleblowers. And that was back in a different day when the whistleblower meant something different than it does today in 2019 with the Trump administration and all that. But what I would say is that Greta Thunberg is someone who is somewhat of a media darling. And I remember about a year ago, it was during the holiday season. I was watching TV with my sister, because the family gets together for the holidays, right? And Malala Yousafzai came on TV, Malala, and my sister was just like, she's a media whore. And I was like, whoa, whoa. But that's a harsh thing to say. Media darling, better term, right? And in all seriousness, there are individuals who do receive an enormous amount of coverage. They receive an enormous amount of support, and they receive an enormous amount of public appearances because they are someone who is a good messenger for a political cause. But we have to insist, whether it's Greta or Malala, it's not always about this person and the figure that they it's not about the public personality. It's about the message. And in the case of climate change, this is a scientific issue. It is not a political one. The politics have to be connected first and foremost to the science. Science is the ground on which climate change policies should be built upon, not just like political feelings. And I think a lot of people are starting to become aware of that. But the problem is the mainstream conversations are all shifted to, what did Greta say today? Oh, did she get mad at someone? Let's make some memes on Facebook. Let's get Donald Trump to start bullying her, whoever actually writes his tweets. Donald Trump does not write those things, by the way. I mean, there's this idea that Donald Trump's just sitting on the toilet at 3 a.m. tweeting, and all the pundits and the commentators talk about that. That doesn't happen. He doesn't even run his Twitter account. And the MSM even talks about that from time to time. But the big thing that I would say is, we need to be very much aware that we can't let these public personalities bog down the conversation. And that's why I was opposed to Time choosing Greta Thunberg as the person of the year. But some of the other nominees they have were just like William Barr, Mike Pompeo, and I said you could vote online. Those guys got like less than 1%. I don't know who on earth would put William Barr or Mike Pompeo as the person of the year, but they were on the list of the giant list of nominees before the short list one. Anyway, choosing Greta Thunberg for Time Person of the Year has really ruffled a lot of feathers, but first and foremost, we need to approach this with an open mind. Let's explore the science more, let's listen to more scientists, and let's listen to just trying to find out what is the definitive answer with all of these things, not whether or not people like the personality of a 16-year-old. Well, that's all I have to say about climate change. What do you think about Greta Thunberg? What do you think about Time's Person of the Year? If you have anything to say at all, please drop a comment below. This is our mini upload for the day. And until next time.